Thank you for the nice introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Hanah. I'm very honored to be here. I hope you can understand my generation maybe a bit better after my speech. I will talk about a topic that is very close to my heart, which is the role of young people in today's politics and diplomacy. I think we all often say that young people are our future, but we rarely say that they are our present as well. Their involvement in politics and diplomacy is crucial to shaping the world into a democratic and peaceful place to live in. I just want you to think about what youth means to you. It is not an abstract group of people somewhere in schools or on TikTok. They are your children, relatives, brothers and sisters, students, and for politicians, your voters, either right now or in the future. They are future taxpayers, leaders, and innovators. And at this conference, the interns and assistants who are doing a great job. I bet you've heard the saying that elected politicians show a cut-through of our societies. That's the way it's supposed to be, but if we look at the numbers, I will take an example of the European Parliament. So in the last term, there were 705 members, of which only 6 people were under the age of 30. That is less than 1%. But at the same time, every 5th European is aged between 18 to 35. How can we then say that the European Parliament is representing all Europeans? I think we can't. If we look at the national parliaments here in the EU, or it doesn't matter, somewhere else in the world, the age dynamic stays the same. The National Parliamentary Union, IPU, suggests that in every parliament, there should be at least 15% of members that are under the age of 30. That is, to guarantee proper representation for the societies. OECD, United Nations, and the Council of Europe have emphasized also that countries where young people are actively involved in politics are more successful and the trust of young people in politics is higher. In Estonia, the voting and candidacy age has changed over time. Today, 16 and 17-year-olds can vote in the local elections, and we are moving towards the same change for the European Parliament and national elections. The reason is that young people are becoming more active and want to have a say in politics. In the example of our 2 last local elections in Estonia, people aged 16 to 17, so the ones who just got the possibility to vote, were more active than people aged 18 to 24. Their turnout was about 40%, which is comparable to older age groups. And it's very logical because 16 and 17-year-olds, they have just learned about the political system, democracy in school, they want to put that into practice. I think that the education system, media space, and family background play an important role in shaping the political awareness of young people, but I would especially say that it is the school system that is crucial. It's simply because for young people, going to school is their job. It is mandatory, and it is where they spend most of their days. Family backgrounds can be different, media rooms can be different, but base education should be the same for everyone. A bit about my story. When I was younger, even younger than I am right now, I know, I get the joke all the time, I didn't go to vote. Not only that, but I wasn't interested in politics. And actually, the first time I voted was in 2021, when I was a candidate. And I think it's okay to say here in this room that I voted for myself for the first time, and I haven't participated in other elections before that. That's because I wasn't told much about politics at home, and I went to a small countryside school with about 60 students in the whole school. In my class, with me, it was 8 people. And although we learned about democracy and politics, the importance of politics and why young people should be more interested in it and why it matters, this was missing. And we also didn't have election debates, and I can't remember being visited by any politicians. I went to high school then, to a city where the school had about 200 students, so it was a bit bigger. We did meet some politicians and had an election debate, but politics still seemed very dull to me. I couldn't see what my role in the system could be. Yes, I was 16 at the time, and I could go to vote, but I didn't understand why politics mattered. I didn't know and care, and so I didn't go. This all changed in 2019, when a conservative and, in my opinion, a very backward-looking government took office. During the worst, they talked about how Estonia should withdraw from the European Union, NATO, exit the Paris Agreement, They insulted minorities, our allies, and the leaders of neighbor countries. I felt disappointed in myself. I wasn't interested in politics, but I still read the news, so I knew what was happening. I felt that I had not fulfilled my civic duty, and now the result is here. I started looking for a place to express myself, and found myself in the youth group of the Reform Party, of which I am a member to this day. I quickly realized how much politics affect all of our lives, and what role I could play in it. What was surprising to me, negatively, was how little political ambition there was and is to deal with climate crisis, human rights, gender equality, and youth participation. So you could say that my interest in politics started with protests, but it doesn't have to be this way. Looking back, I have to admit I'm sad that I wasn't inspired by a very cool politician back in school, or that politics wasn't discussed in my family. I missed 3 elections due to lack of interest and knowledge. So because I don't want this to happen to anyone in Estonia or elsewhere, I highly suggest that it's important to lower the voting and candidacy age to 16 and 18 respectively. But these changes are not magic. They must be supported by the education system, family background, media space, content creators, and the society as a whole. So I think young people want to hear more about politics, where they are. This is the solution. On social media and at school. They expect concrete solutions from politicians, not abstract promises. They must also have the legal right to have a say and to express their will by going to vote. I really want you to urge to follow the campaign of Kamala Harris in the US, because Gen Z has her back, and I think this could lead to her victory. At least that's what I hope for. But some of you who might be not on the same idea level that I am, you might think that young people are not responsible enough. They are easily manipulated and simply not ready for politics, not as voters, and even less to run for office themselves. I've heard 1,000 times that Gen Z is a generation of snowflakes. But I have heard way more or less about how we, as politicians, should take an active role in educating the youth and making sure they are understanding how the world around them works. Let me tell you a few things about my generation. Until 2022, we had not seen a war. We grew up in free and democratic countries. We had the internet, mobile phones, and computer games when we were younger. We made our first social media accounts when we were kids. We were taught English right from the elementary school. We know you can have a job that you can do remotely and travel, and we also have courage to switch jobs and even schools if we find that they are not suitable for us, because we know there are a million reasons to do that. There are so many options in the world. It's normal for us to leave our countries for a few years to study abroad or just to go travel the world, and so on. These things don't make us snowflakes. It just makes us a new generation that have a different life experience and values. Just because we don't care about someone's race, how they identify themselves, or what their sexual orientation is, it doesn't mean that we are in any way soft. It means that we are empathetic. Young people worry about climate change, violation of human rights, the cost of living, education, and so on, but it's not up to them to solve these crises. I often hear from my colleagues that it's up to the young people to solve the crisis for the future, and the future is in their hands. It is and it isn't. Right now they are protesting on the streets, going to court against the governments, and they're scared for their future. That is because they are disappointed in the system that they have to live in and the politicians elected who are not doing enough for their futures. And when young people are vocal on their worries, adults, especially politicians, tell them to grow up, finish their schools, and gain a little bit of life experience. Then we can talk. I want all politicians listening to this speech to think about how and if they actually engage with young people. How many schools, universities, or kindergartens have you visited? I mean during your term, not during the election period. How many young people do you know, actually, from your electoral district? I believe all politicians have a good amount of young voters. This means we have an obligation to serve and represent them as well, not just during the election period when you want to go to schools and want to create content on TikTok to gain young voters. And if you believe that you don't have any young voters, then who should we look at? Is it you or is it the young people? You would be surprised to hear how many young people have started to turn to populism and extremism. You can say that it's the fault of social media or the populist parties, but who controls the systems that we are raising our young people in? I can assure you that it's not the young people and kids themselves. I went to give a lecture at a school this springtime. I talked about why I went to politics, encouraged young people to vote, to be critical of politicians, and because we had elections coming up for the European Parliament. We talked about the climate crisis, gender inequality, all that. And in the end of the lecture, a group of boys asked me various questions. For example, why did I support the marriage equality bill in the Parliament? How can I protect the gay people if they are not normal? One boy strongly argued that there is no gender wage gap, that it was all made up. Before I started to leave school, a group of girls came to me and apologized for the behavior of the group of boys. They said that these boys rarely go to school, they have bad grades, and they have problems at home. So reading about politics in textbooks, that's just theory. And if the theory does not get young people interested to go to vote or is bad quality, we again have to think about who is responsible for building the framework for schools and different subjects taught there. In the end, it's politicians. So you can say no to youth events as a politician in a rural area or a not so elite school, but then you can also say no to the opportunity to raise a new and informed generation, because one meeting and just one example of a motivated and determined politician can change someone's life. Think back of your school days. You will definitely remember an inspiring speaker or a teacher who made the day or class much more interesting, or maybe even inspired you to take a specific major or a career path. Now about diplomacy. The role of young people in diplomacy is also significant. Young people have fresh ideas and energy, which is very much needed to meet the challenges of modern diplomacy. And many countries of the world have organized a system of youth delegates who act as young diplomats. I hope you've heard of some of those. These young people provide input to the official agenda of their country for different negotiations and can even actively participate themselves in the international negotiations. For example, I was Estonia's youth climate delegate at COP27 in 2022, where I, alongside with other EU youth delegates, coordinated the EU youth agenda and presented it at the official EU coordination. The preparation for the agenda started right when the last COP ended, so it was hard work. But all of the coordination was managed by the youth themselves. The negotiations around the agenda, setting up meeting rooms at COP27, etc. We didn't have much support from the outside, but we still did everything we could because we wanted to represent our country's youth well. In the EU, not only are there youth delegates for climate, but also for the UN, for the EU generally, for the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities, for UNESCO, and many more. Their role in their home countries is to educate the youth about their work, the institutions, and how they could get involved, and why the youth's opinion and cooperation matters. They gather youth opinions and ideas to form official agendas and statements. At international events, such as COP, we can see the efforts of youth delegates in communicating their views and statements to the diplomats and politicians of the countries. Unfortunately, the position papers that they had worked hard on for a whole year, or maybe more, they do not always reach the decision maker's table, and if they do, are not being taken seriously. This makes the delegates feel like their role can be just nice to have thing in the official delegations, but their actual work isn't appreciated, and usually it isn't paid as well. Therefore, if youth delegates are not supported by diplomats, negotiators, and officials, in the future we will have a lack of young diplomats who know how to advocate for future generations and represent new ideas with new values. And at youth events, generally speaking, whether it's regional, local, international, politicians, diplomats, and other influential people often do not show up, but rather send in a greeting video. Before presenting, it's always said that they had more important things to do. They have a tight schedule, or something very, very urgent came up. But at the events, it's expected from the youth to participate actively, to share their ideas, to cooperate and innovate. My question is, why should they do that if the people who are leading the changes can't even bother to show up for 15 minutes? So, please, let's not waste the young people's time and energy. Believe me, they do have much more to do with their lives than to protest or write position papers. I said in the beginning of my speech that politics and diplomacy must reflect all sections of society, including the youth. And as politicians and diplomats, it is our duty to ensure that the voice of young people is heard and that their contribution is taken into account. This is the only way we can create a better future for everyone. I urge all listeners to support the involvement of young people in politics and diplomacy. Review your party systems and diplomatic corps. Do you actually support young people? Do you have a system for young people to grow, learn, take responsibility, and in the end lead? Think about whether there actually is a specific age or a specific amount of life experience that makes you a good politician or diplomat. I would say there's not. Informed young people are definitely an invaluable asset. It means that we have a new generation of people who are interested in how the world works and want to contribute for a better future. They know their values and want to stand up for them. Populism, extremism, or disinformation are not appealing to them. They trust the politicians and diplomats who are responsible for their home country's well-being. And in the end, the youth just lives a better life. They're happier and they feel like they belong. Listening to the young minds is listening to the voice of the future, and the kind of future you would also like to live in and that you would look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech and for sharing with us your story. So, do you have any questions for our young participant?
And those of us via Zoom as well. We cut you off before, so now's your chance.
Yeah, we have one actually here in the room.
Hello, my name is Victoria, MP from Sweden. I was wondering if the parliament in Estonia encouraged the parliament members to meet up with school children and younger children, because that's what happens in the Swedish parliament. So this spring I have met up with 30 different classes from high school and also visited different middle schools. So the parliament kind of expects us to do that. I wonder if you have anything the same in Estonia. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question. It's not expected because the MPs in their work are quite independent, as I believe it's like in everywhere. However, we do get a lot of visits for tours, whether it is a kindergarten, university, middle school, elementary school, and we actively meet with young people. But I would say it's more up to the MPs themselves to actually inform young people about their work, go to meet them, not during the election period, but on other times as well. And in the end, it comes down to the party system, the party's list system, how much young people are there on the list. If they are, is there a youth organization for the party? So many things. So I think it's up to the MPs. And what might contribute the most is just sharing information, because you can ask any random young person you meet on a street about politics, and I'm 90% sure that not many of them know exactly how politics work, or if they do, they don't know what the politician's job is. And this ends up them believing that all politicians are corrupt, that we do nothing, we just want to get a seat for the money, just to get reelected, and so on.
Any other questions? Yes, we have one more in the back.
Hey, good afternoon. I believe in successive leadership, so I am curious to find out, in Estonia, are you guys, the politician particularly, collaborating with youth so that the youth can continue and take over as politicians become older and the ideas become more far-fetched, etc.? And what exactly is it as a youth parliamentarian? Do you find that you get a lot of junior ministerial roles to do, or are you collaborating with senior politicians so that you can do more heavy lifting in your country?
Thank you. If I understood the last question, right? You meant if I have the same sort of duties as older MPs? Yes. Obviously, when I was elected, let's just put it that way, not many people in the opposition that are usually men, conservative, and older than me, they don't like me because I'm a good combo of a young person who is also happens to be a woman, stands up for climate issues, so we don't usually agree on much. But I do have the same duties, and I feel like I have way more advantages than some of my older and more experienced colleagues. For example, because of social media, because my word can spread way further than theirs because I use social media, and because also there are not many young people in politics. So if you decide to take on the step, you can stand out pretty easily, and that makes you a role model for young people, which is heavy sometimes on the shoulders, but then again, it makes other young people see that it's a possibility to join politics at a young age, that this is not something that is very rare. And I believe that in 2027, when we have the next parliamentary elections in Estonia, I definitely won't be the youngest anymore. I'm pretty sure of that. But when it comes to the first part of your question, then in Estonia we have a really good system of youth political organizations. So every party, whether they are in the parliament or not, they have a youth organization which has the same sort of system as the big party. So you have a secretary general, you have a leader, you have a board, you have your own sort of constitution, you have elections. And a good example of how successful they are is that on Tuesday we appointed the new government in Estonia, and the prime minister from my party, he was the founder of my party's youth organization. So we have many ministers that have sort of risen up from youth organizations, and it's working really well. And if you're in the youth organization, you're not obligated to join the party formally, so you don't have to sort of get the mark on yourself. You can just see whether it works for you. You can switch them if you want. So this is a practice that I would highly recommend all of you to do as well in your countries.
Thank you so much. And we have one more.
Yeah, thank you very much for your impressive presentation. Since I was youth program manager for almost 5 years in Afghanistan, and we had a broad nationwide network there, we have selected 3 of our young people among our network, and then we select them to be nominated to the parliamentarian election. So luckily, through our campaigns, wide campaign throughout the country, these 3 young people selected and become parliamentarian in Afghanistan parliament. So do you have such kind of network in Estonia, or how did you come to be a parliamentarian, young parliamentarian, through a network or an independent candidate for the parliamentarian election? Your story.
Thank you. Well, I started out from the party's youth organization just to get to know the people and the system. But I was elected, I don't know, from the list and with my votes. So we don't have a very concrete list system. You still have to get votes in order to be elected. And I got a lot of votes. I think most of my voters are young people. I can't confirm this, but that's what I believe. And something that might have been different, obviously, is the social media campaign, but also the fact that I had a lot of endorsement from different content creators and influencers who I shared the same values with. I just texted them, and I saw if they wanted to reach out back to me, and then we could maybe do a collaboration on something. And I mean, they have tens of thousands of followers. I don't. I mean, influencers and content creators, they have such a huge platform that this is definitely something to think about when you're in politics. But I also got elected because I was doing campaign very actively. I was doing it on social media, on the streets. And when it comes to young people, I think you often find some bit different ideas for campaigns. So for example, for me it was in daytime I did a street campaign with regular flyers and pens and candies, and then at night during the weekends I went in front of the clubs and I had condoms which had printed a sticker that said "Climate policy is sexy." Then it had my name and my candidate number. And this went viral. I don't know how many votes I got from it, but it was fun. And it showed young people that I want to be where they are, because I am one of them, and just something different that people like to remind me after the elections. So.
And I believe because of time we have time for one more question, and actually
I promise I'll be
because of time
brief.
issues.
Thank you so much for your speech. It was very inspiring, and it was wonderful to hear your story. My name's Gabe. I'm from Canada. And my question is, by encouraging active politicians to speak in schools to young people who are still students developing their worldview, does this not put the schools and the teachers involved at risk of appearing or facing accusations of being partisan? And if so, how would you get around that?
Thank you. It's a good question. We've had the problem in Estonia. So it started in 2017 when the law of Vote at 16 it was applied for the first time. But we have this sort of rule in Estonia that if you arrange a school debate that is political, you have to have participants from all parties. Obviously, not everyone always answers, but there needs to be a balance. And if you get invited as a speaker, at least that's good thing that I do. I talk about my work, why I went to politics, and just more general things than invite people to vote for me, because that would be just like misusing the platform. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Can we
Thank
have a
you.
round of applause for? Maybe because of time, can you share a question later? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So. Because of time, we'll continue immediately. So again, we have a member of parliament, an MP now, not this time from Finland. Together with us today, we have Nora Fagerström, born in 1985 in Helsinki, and she's a Finnish entrepreneur and politician. In 2011,